Welcome to the Feel Better, Be Better show. Today, Kate and Nevada will answer your questions and introduce new topics designed to help feel better and be better. These are raw conversations, but they will make a difference.
All right, let's see here. We got to go intro it up for our whole thing on, man, what do we even call this?
I don't know.
Player, coach, parent, perspective, just different things. Maybe I'm just complaining about stuff.
I don't think that's true. I mean, you can complain if you want to, but I think it's more just about like development, the different things you're looking for, and different things that are out there.
Yeah, it's a whole
different philosophies out there.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of other things. So enjoy the show. All right, let's see here. All right, Kate. So I think we're going to get into a couple different things here, maybe like a couple shows or something or whatever. But we've had a couple situations pop up here the last 3-4 months or whatever that kind of made us really, I don't know, at least made me really question, like, how much do we need to speak to kids and parents and stuff like that? And is there any reason to? Can it even help you on like expectations or, you know, what the actual perspective is of, you know, kids we're developing and the goals that we're looking for? Because I think the parental, the goals of the kid, the goals of the parents, and the goals of the coaches may be completely at a different, you know, perspective, different ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. I like to think of like one of the best thing, one of the things I have liked the most and feel the most proud about is the fact that we had 2 girls try out for high school ball and both of them made it. To me, that's like the ultimate win. You know, winning as many games, you know, 50 games last season, wouldn't care. I'm like, as long as we're developing to be on the teams that could possibly make a difference, that's all I really care about. So I was kind of curious how many different avenues we could get into there on that, but what do you think on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it depends on where you want to start, but there's a lot of different philosophies and stuff out there on what people look for, and you and I kind of fit in an area that's not the norm.
Yeah.
Not saying that we haven't met a lot of other great coaches out there who don't respect that and also teach the same message, but it just seems like younger, there's fewer and further between.
Between what?
Oh, just working on building kids to have the tools to succeed later in life versus setting them up to maybe have success in winning in the moment. That might not last long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, most of our practices, even in our older teams, you know, we're still looking at proper throwing technique. We're still looking at proper fielding technique. We're looking at proper, you know, setup with the bat and everything like that when we're hitting. Mm-hmm. And we're still working on just throwing. And I mean, I don't know how much me and you've really talked about this, but like with me on throwing in particular, even overhand, I'm not real good on teaching underhand. But a lot of times I like just put them in front of like a big net or a big, you know, fence or something like that. And we're just working on release point. You know, just that feel. I don't tell them that. I really say we're focusing on the actual mechanics as we're doing it, but all I'm really actually teaching them at that point is feeling that release point. When you have somebody you're throwing to, you're giving them something to aim at, they start aiming. So I think it's kind of nice when you're talking about pitchers, you know, people just learning how to throw and stuff like that. You feel it. It's amazing when you're like a kid, it's almost like you think that you're guiding it because we were able to throw it at the same spot. We're just used to, we've thrown so many times that we just feel where we release it. So I may put a kid in practice throwing up against a net or up against a screen, even when they're 14 years old or something like that. And somebody may be like, that's not a very good practice. But I'm like, if you're not getting enough reps, if you haven't done it enough, you need to feel comfortable with that release point. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that anybody else would basically just turn around and say like, you know, throw to their chest, you know, and it's just like, I think you're just going to reinforce the bad thing of them aiming it once you start trying to not I got to make sure I try to hit that target, or I might miss that target. Is when you start you throw it all over the place because you just don't trust your throw.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're teaching kids game situations of where to cover the base or how to cover for bunts and all that stuff is great, but they don't even know how to throw the ball consistently, I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can be the best at running up and fielding a bunt all day long, but if you can't make the throw to first, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of have to start at square one first. So, like, yeah, all that stuff looks great because you're moving and you're doing the stuff you're supposed to do, and you want to get to at a higher level after you've gotten solid with your throwing. But if you can't do that, then what does it matter? And that's like, you can go to the hitting side of it. We've seen teams that their stances and fundamentals in hitting are not good. If you get a pitcher who can change speed, has decent speed and control,
You mean when?
yeah, they're going to get picked apart because they're not going to be able to adjust because mechanically they're broken in certain parts of their swing, at least for certain types of pitches, and a good pitcher and a good coach will find that. So it doesn't matter if you're fast and you can do the delayed stills and you can do, bunts or whatever. Like, that stuff doesn't matter if you can't hit when you're up against a pitcher that's going to be able to, like, dissect the weaknesses in your swing.
Well, and I don't think people realize how easy it is to see that from a hitting coach. I mean, me and you both. I mean, we'll see them walking up. They put their stance in, and you're like, "Ooh, high inside fastballs." And as long as you do that, they'll never catch it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if you throw it slow enough, they'll catch up to it. Or we'll just be like, with that setup, they're never gonna be able to get the outside or whatever. I mean, we can literally see it from the sideline before they even swing. Now, as soon as somebody does swing, you might be like, "Oh," and this one.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. That's what we're sitting over there doing it. We don't necessarily have the age group and skill level yet to be able to call that. But when they do get that level, we don't need necessarily the fastest pitcher. We don't necessarily need the most junk pitches. I mean, we can tear a hitter inside out by basically just picking our spots and our speeds.
Yeah. I mean, just to look at, we had a scrimmage yesterday, and one of our pitchers who was a little better at inside outside and did have a changeup compared to our pitcher who she got in a groove and was fairly consistent but one speed and just was getting it over the plate. And then our other one, who she was a little faster, so it helped her out, but the one when she could hit her spots inside or outside and throwing that changeup on the right girls, they really struggled to hit her. I mean, It just, you could tell, like, okay, this girl's never going to be able to wait on that outside pitch because she's pulling everything. Pulling out on everything, or that changeup, and there was a couple girls that is like the batters. I threw 2 or 3 changeups in a row on them because she was throwing them for a strike and they were never going to touch it.
No, they were way out in front.
They couldn't adjust, and so I mean, it makes me feel for those girls because, yeah, they're not on my team, but they are going to struggle so much because they're not going to know why they're not successful because nobody's showing them how to break down the fundamentals of it and be able to cover hitting the whole plate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come back to the fact that, I was more happy that we had 2 for 2 on tryouts on the high school team. That speaks way more volumes than how many wins we had last year because I'm like, we know those girls. We know the ones that tried out. We could see it coming over the last 2 years. They went from, hey, we play softball, to like, okay, what do I need to do to get better? I mean, you can see that change. We've also seen plenty of 10-year-old, 12-year-olds that look good. They got way burnt out or just nothing. It was just too much or didn't necessarily progress because they were too good at the time. So,
or you get the ones that, there's some kids that they're really good young and they do a good job continuing to work on it. But a lot of kids I've seen peak at such a young age that when other people catch up to them, they've never had to struggle at anything, that they just quit or just stay in mediocre because they don't know how to push to get better. They've never had to do that.
Oh, we've seen that tale lots. I mean, that's when they go and they do a different sport.
Yeah.
Or, we blame coaches or something. But I mean, that's being able to deal with that adversity is something you got to pick up when you're young. If you don't, I don't know if you ever will handle it very well.
Yeah.
So that's why, I am kind of a proponent. We've done this quite a few with some players that are pretty good where we've moved them up to play with the older group, just because it helps keep that drive, keep that strive, keep that I'm looking to get one a little bit more, a little bit, try a little harder, got to work a little bit more. Otherwise, that thing where you're like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah, it puts you in a perspective that there are better people out there than you.
Yeah. Well, as you get older, you realize there's almost always somebody better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being the absolute best in that kind of stuff. I mean, you start getting very specific, like, that's the best girl for hitting home runs, or that's the best, guy for throwing the highest speed. I mean, you kind of have to get very specific, because you may throw the highest speed, but you may not have the highest strikeout rate.
Yeah.
You may have the highest strikeout rate, but you have the worst curveball or something. I don't know. I mean, there's just all kinds of different things that as you get up to that elite level where there's so many amazing players that do a lot of amazing things, you're not going to be able to be the best. As when you're like a 10-year-old, you could easily be the best at every facet on the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to do that. So that, I would say, is kind of our perspective on the coaching side of things. I kind of look at some other coaches and I see their perspective. Like when we see them and we played before, and even, here recently, I mean, we've had some players try out for us that their dads coached, or, their team broke up and they asked us to help take on some people, and they saw us do our coaching practices and they were like, that's an interesting philosophy of how you go about doing stuff. And made me kind of think about, well, what is theirs? So I'm thinking, okay, what is it that their main goal is? And then you can almost see it when you start thinking that way. You can see it. They're like, oh, they want to win. They want to be able to say they had this many wins. It doesn't really matter how they get there, as long as like they can say the teams I coached had this winning percentage. I mean, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think you can almost, when you kind of think about that, you can kind of see those coaches out there.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, nobody wants to lose. Losing sucks. I don't like losing. But, I mean, it just depends on what you remind yourself and what you want your end goal to be. Because, yeah, I mean, you can take any team and move the girls in certain positions and focus on certain things and probably be successful if wins is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my opinion, that's not hard. That's the easy way to do things. It's not easy to win, but it's easier to hide your weaknesses and take advantage of certain opportunities depending on your age group to win.
Well, I would actually come back and I would never say this, I can't do it, I'm too competitive, but I would almost say losing when you're younger is almost a better scenario. I mean, you've got to learn that adversity. We talked about that already. You got to learn
to fight back.
Well, no, you got to be able to learn how to claw, to grind, to be able to go, man, they might be better, but I got to do this. Because as you get older, the ability of everybody starts leveling out quite a bit. And the only thing you got left is that drive, that stride.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think you almost need a little bit of that. And it kind of sucks where, I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm like, well, we learned a good lesson today. And it's just like, well, how many times do you learn a lesson before you actually win?
Mm-hmm.
I think we will win more this year. But we learned a lot of lessons last year.
Yeah.
And the year before.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's should me and you go out there and coach all these things that would easily allow us to do wins? Could we coach our players to crowd the play and get hit with the ball? Absolutely. Could we teach them how to bunt and run around? Absolutely. I mean, we do teach a lot of those things. We just don't implement them in the game. I say we teach that. We definitely don't teach them to get hit with the ball. We are trying to develop hitters.
Yeah.
Because me and you both know you can hit the ball, they'll find a way to get you in the lineup. But you can run the base pass the best of your ability, but if you can't hit or play defense, you're not going to play. So, with that, I don't know where I was going, but I'm just going to change up on you real quick. So that would be the coaching perspective, and another other coaching perspective. We've had some interesting scenarios where we've had some coaches do some questionable things here recently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of one player in particular that went on a team that we both were like, whoa, that is way too high, too big of a level for you, a definitely huge jump. And we are just praying that it works out for them because they did it. But I think of like that coach's perspective, and I think we have to play that in to this. Other coaches get desperate as well. So I mean, if you're sitting there with 8 girls like we've had done before, 7 girls.
I mean, we've even had to take questionable girls at certain times just to have enough on the field, hoping that we found someone with a decent enough attitude or with coachability or that, you know, would prove us wrong. But you're like, I don't know about her. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, yeah, I mean, anybody can get in that situation.
Yeah, but I mean, I think as a parent, you almost have to, you need to make sure in particular understand that that is a coaching perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They could be in a situation where it's like, well, I've had these 7 kids, they've been playing on this team the entire, you know, for 5 years, 6 years now, and I just got to get 3 more players to be able to make it, give one more season. You know, is it okay if I take this person that really probably shouldn't be playing here, but it allows us to be able to play? It kind of one of those things where it's like you're filling the desperate need of somebody else. It may not work out well for that player.
Yeah, well, and as a parent too, I mean, yeah, it's great. I'm not going to say that it doesn't feel good when you're asked by a team that has a good record and maybe good reputation or whatever, maybe not, to come play for their program. Like, I mean, if your kid gets asked for that, you immediately like, oh, great, they think they're up to snuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome. But you really have to look at it like when she's out there at practice with them, is she going to maybe get less playing time, but going to get playing time and learn? Or is she just another person that she's probably going to sit on the bench most of the time? Or if she does bat at the bottom of the lineup, like where she would have been at the beginning of the lineup on this other team over here, like it depends if you're wanting her to get reps and a lot of playing time. If that's the case, that might not be the best situation for that girl. If you want her to sit behind better leaders and experience stuff and then work her way into the lineup, maybe that's where you want to go. I don't know. I mean, it's just, you have to consider it. And I think so many parents are just so, oh, my daughter got asked to play on such and such team. What are they going to play the positions they want? How much playing time are they going to get? Are they going to be successful? Like,
Are they going to develop her?
yeah, you have to know those things. If those aren't yeses, are you okay with that? Do you have another motive that is beneficial there? Or is it just going to be where you're going to end up getting up frustrated and then be scrambling to find somewhere else to take her?
Well, we've seen plenty of teams too that had, you know, 6 very good players and like 4 very questionable players. But those 4 questionable players were able to be kind of masked, and even though they were on this really awesome team,
yeah,
because they had 6 really good players, those 4 never really developed because the coach was too busy. It sounds horrible when I'm saying it, but I mean, I know I could easily see where I would fall into it too, really fast. Too busy winning the tournaments, playing the things, making everything work because that starts feeding that ego of how good of a coach am I, how good as my team is, and you want to play more, you want to do more, you want to do this, and next thing you know, those 4 girls never learned how to develop and they don't do anything. So here they played on this high-powered, great team. Oh my God, they asked me to play, and they can't even make their high school team.
Yeah, but I mean, it's easy as a coach to have more fun coaching the girl who's already successfully doing stuff that you can show some of the higher level stuff to and watch them like building stuff from there. It is a lot harder when you've got a girl who you have to break it down further to and take extra time to spend teaching lessons to, and they might get it slower. Like, that's hard.
All right, let's go down to the exact mechanics of how you throw the ball. We're
Yeah,
go
when you've
step
got 6
by step by step by step,
yeah, when
and
you've
that's
got
hard to
6
do.
girls that can throw and you've got 2 that can't, it feels like a waste of the other 6's time for you to take the time to show the 2 how to throw.
Yep, completely. And then you have to really, of course, if you're at a 14-year-old level, in that case, you're going to have to seriously do we got to move some people around. But if you're at like an 8-year-old scenario, that's kind of what the deal is.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just interesting. I think it's interesting as a parent, as a player, you need to understand where the coach is coming from, and that it seems I understand. It's really hard because you're really happy you got asked. Why may be a great question to ask. Mm-hmm. Like, what is your team setup? What is the things you're trying to do? You know, what is it that you're looking to do with each player? How do you go about developing? How do you do about practice? What is the stipulation? All that kind of stuff. Because I mean, And a lot of these very competitive teams, you're talking quite a bit of money as well.
Yeah, you're paying thousands of dollars to go travel out of state every other weekend.
Yep.
To have your daughter maybe ride the bench most of the time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to invest for nothing out of it.
And again, I mean, if it is, and I'm not trying to dog anybody's situation, but if it's literally a coach that's just putting the players together and throwing them out on the field and they're not really doing development, they're not really doing, practices as intently, that practices are just, reps and stuff like that. We have practices that are like that too. I'm not trying to act like we don't. How is that any good for a girl that's still developing, that still needs to work on things?
Yeah. And with that too, just to clarify, there are a lot of those travel teams that do develop their girls.
Absolutely.
So that's not it's not a dog on every person that if you're at the elite level, you don't care about your other players, because there are some very good coaches out there. But we just see a lot of coaches that are the in-between or on that level that are more up that don't do that.
Yeah. Well, again, same prime example. We had a girl that tried out for our younger team. This girl was heads and tails above most of the players we have, which we tend to take girls from rec to competitive. So we're usually going to be on the lower end. We don't have quite as good. They're intimidated. They're nervous. They're anxious. All that stuff. Maybe their skills aren't quite honed and all that kind of stuff as well. So I mean, we're kind of used to that role. And they tried out for us. Super nice family. Super nice girl. Very good. She was really, really good player. And we basically kind of told the parents, like, well, we would absolutely take her. She's amazing. Are you sure that's right for you?
Yeah.
I
think they were kind of dumbfounded.
They were. I saw the look on their face of like, did you really just say that? Almost. We're like, no, we are, because what's the point in us taking you on, taking the commitment? I mean this in the nicest way, taking it away from another possible player, when it's not going to work out for you. You're going to be upset. The rest of the girls we have on the team are not near as good as your girl. We're not going to win as many games. She could get frustrated. You could get frustrated. So how is that helping anybody?
Yeah, and we don't play as often as they're used to playing.
Sure.
And I know like that was part of it, but it was like, don't get me wrong, like our girls are solid athletes.
Absolutely.
They're good players, nothing against any of them. I think they will be a very good team. We're just not there yet.
We're not to that kid's level.
No, that kid was an elite level.
Yes, very, very, very good player.
Could have easily gone and tried out at any team, even older teams than what she could have played on, and started.
And they would have picked her up immediately.
Yeah. So.
And we, of course, would have drooled over her to have on the team. But again, if it's not going to work out not long term, then what's the point?
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, that girl was really good. We try to get all of our players developed to where we can put them on that level with them. And I don't want to take anything away from our players. We have girls that are very good. And we are trying to make them better. And I did have one parent that kind of looked at me kind of weird, like, well, my kid isn't good enough anymore because we were talking about it. And I'm just like, no, I don't think you understand.
Did you see her try out?
Yeah, well, no, I'm like, no, she didn't.
Okay.
This is a parent on the older team. I just don't think people understand. You see those like pro players and everybody's like, oh, they're really good. I'm like, no, they are on a next level. They really are. I mean, you can take some of the best pros in any sport and take them down to just like the college level, and they will make them look like they don't have any idea what they're doing in the game. Most of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a couple. And that's the hard thing to tell parents. So you're like, no, I've seen kids at 10-year-old be able to beat 14-year-olds, which is pretty much the situation we were in.
Well, that's the thing.
That girl was a 10-year-old and one of our best hitting 14-year-olds, and they, to me, were going neck and neck.
Yeah,
that's how good that girl was.
That's the thing. They tried out on the same night that one of our top 14 teams, who made her high school JV team,
freshman, made the high school team. That's who she was. She was with that night. They hit the same.
And she could have still played 10.
And she could still play 10. Yes.
Like, that is a huge age gap.
Well, and I don't think you understand how much different that is until you literally see it. Now, I will say, our 14-year-old definitely hit it with a little bit more power. But, I mean, we're talking 4 years of age here. We're talking a lot of weight, a lot of strength development, and a lot of coordination development. And so, I mean, but contact rate, hitting it, line drives, hitting it for power, that kind of stuff, they were pretty much, she was a little bit better on a few of them, maybe a little less on power, but you would expect that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very minimal, if anything.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
It was like, can I put her on our 14 team? Like, I couldn't do that to her, but like.
Well, then you run into that whole thing of like, okay, that makes sense because we know she can hold up, but is it good for the player's psyche? Is it? And that's where I come back where even if you are invited to play with a team that maybe is up a couple levels, I know me and you kind of feel this way. I'm like, because I know I did it as a kid, you can guest play.
Yeah.
You don't have to be on the team. As a matter of fact, I know for me in particular, not baseball, for plenty of other reasons we can get into, but in almost every other sport, I usually had my age group team that I played on, and I usually played for a team or two above me, above my age group that I would go play games with. Now, we had way less tracking back then. I'm not aware that my parents had to do anything. I'm like, oh, get the coaches to sign off and send off into USSSA or whatever the heck. But I'm just saying, I didn't like go and be a part of that team. I just was like, oh yeah, I'll play that weekend or whatever, or oh yeah, I'll play the next one too, or something like that, because I just wanted to play games. It was a challenge. It wasn't my team. I wasn't expected to do that. And every sport I did that in, I seemed to play better because it was almost like I just played to play. Baseball, I was always like, this was my team, and I was never good enough to play. So how do you feel about like the whole guest playing stuff? Because I think we're amazingly open for our coaches. We know a lot of other coaches that aren't.
Yeah, I mean, I know as a coach, it's really easy to be concerned that your player's going to go guest play and then just go team hop.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy for that to happen. But like, and I feel like we've done a good job of being very transparent with our team that, you know, we're going to play once a month. If you want to play more than that, that's great. I have parents that don't want to. I can help you find somewhere to guest play. There's lots of teams that post that they need a player. I encourage you to go play with other coaches and other teams and see what's out there and get a different vibe so you understand everything that there is out there. Because there are going to be some really great coaches that you'll learn stuff from. They might say similar things in a different way that make it click, or teach you something I'm not teaching you. And then you might get a guy who's just like, or a girl, who's just total trash as a coach and be like, I never want to play for that type of a team ever, you know? I mean,
well, we're about to get introduced to that by when our 2 high school players come back to the team.
Yeah.
We're probably going to hear about the coaching styles, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot different. Most people do not coach like we do.
Yeah, but it gives the girls an opportunity that if they want to get more games, they're able to get more games without feeling pressured because everybody else on the team is. You're able to go play. And because we've been pretty transparent, most of my players aren't afraid to tell me that they are going to go guest play weekend. Like, they're like, hey, I'm going to go guest play this weekend. Is that cool? And it usually is. They don't realize I get the request, or not, it's not a request, but they don't realize I get the approval sent to me that they're on a different roster for the weekend. And so it's funny, the ones that like try to be all secretive about it and then like, oh yeah, I knew you were down there. I know all the things.
Yeah.
Try to be all sneaky about
the
it.
whole point of the roster. Well, I think it's interesting, and I know we have talked about this, but I don't know we have talked about this, but we're kind of open and transparent because you want to find out that player that is team hopper. I mean, we have definitely had our fair shares that have come through that we were like, yeah, we'll take you on. Well, it'd be great. You'll fill a hole. We'll help you out. And then a month later, they're on another team.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, believe me, if that's what you want to do, there's a place for that. And there's plenty of places for that type of scenario. And I think we've tried to leave ourselves exposed to that so that we could find out the players that are interested in developing themselves and being a part of our team, as opposed to the players that are just looking to fill their numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, so that's a whole lot of coaching perspective. That's a little bit of player perspective relating to coaching, but we still have coaching or player perspective relating to like what they're looking for out of their stuff, or parent connections, a whole lot of other level things. But yeah. I think at this point we probably want to call it a wrap on this one and come back at it later.
We've at least hit the coaching side.
Yes, probably too hard. So we'll call it a night. So good night, everybody.
Thank you for watching. Kate and Nevada hope you've enjoyed this show and found it useful and empowering. If you have any questions or comments, please contact them at kinetics.com. That's KNETICX.com. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. And please write a review of the show. Kate and Nevada appreciate hearing the feedback, and they welcome your reviews, and your word of mouth will help others learn how to feel better and be better.